He kōna I purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Well, Tūtehuarewa is the only marae in Te Waipounamu as I know it. And Ngāi Tahu, that's named after a woman.
Wow.
Well, the whenua, there was a number of women, not just our nami, that own Māori land here, in particular on the Horamaka or on the Banks Peninsula. A lot of Māori land was owned by women.
I think people forget that when the settlers came, that they went to the men in the village to chat because that was the value system from back in England, wasn't it? That the men were in charge. And I assume that many of the men that they were chatting to were probably thinking, why are you talking to me? She's the boss.
Well, they still do that. They do that now, don't they?
They do. Today was an early wake-up for photographer Fran and I. We'd flown into Ōtautahi Christchurch the previous evening and had to rise with the birds to drive an hour out past Littleton, past Diamond Harbour to Koukourarata Port Levy, onto Pātaka o Ngāi to Banks Peninsula. Well, an hour might not sound too far from town, but it is definitely the worst drives of all the trips for this podcast. Very tight, windy drive through hills on small roads. But you know what? The journey is well worth it because we got to meet Elizabeth at her family home. Kia ora, I'm Āpēj Tarato Rangikura, he uri no Ngāti Irakehu, Ngaitirangi, Ngāpuhi me Ngāti Rārua. This is Far From Town, made by Shepherdess in RNZ. Stories of women at the end of windy gravel roads and up remote valleys across Aotearoa. We've pulled into a driveway near the end of Puari Road, opposite the marae Tūtehuarewa. And there is Elizabeth Hera Cunningham, this beautiful queer under the veranda of her whānau homestead. Elizabeth, who has whakapapa to Ngāi Tahu, Ngāti Irakehu and Ngāti Mutunga ki Wharekauri, reminds me of a kaikaranga on the marae. And bless her, she was very relieved we made it as the rain was coming in and the roads aren't the friendliest. I felt like I was coming home. We walk under the back veranda, where there's a whānau-sized table and chairs for relaxing, with an open door and the smell of coffee and toast wafting out. I get the sense that this is a place where people gather. Walking in through the back door, we see a beautiful breakfast spread for us and walls covered in family portraits and art. One thing I can tell you is that Elizabeth was deeply offended we'd arrived with food, and in true queer style, she spends the morning catering to our needs, and you'll hear her dropping in and out as she proudly shows us different things from around her home.
I'm proud of this place. I'm very proud of it. Well, Linda and I, my twin sister and I, have put a lot of love into this house because it needed redoing. When Dad left this house to us in his will, I can assure you it's not the house that you see now. And the earthquake took a bit out of it too. And Linda and I thought, oh, no, we're not going up the back to the toilet up the back. We're going to have a toilet inside the house. And, you know, so we got all those, the whole house has been renovated, but it's still the same design. Those windows were put in, you know, all this, it's all still the same, except it's been strengthened and repainted and modernised. When my grandparents built it, they came up from the Chatham Island. This is my, okay. This is my grandparents when they got married at Rapaki. That's my nanny. She was Mary Tikau. Her father was Tioni Tari Tikau. And that's my grandfather, Henry Grenell, Ngāti Mutunga ki Wharekauri. And these two it was an arranged marriage, and these two decided once they'd married, they'd go back to his land on the Chatham Islands. My nanny went back with them, had 4 children, of which he was the midwife. And they had 5 babies actually, and sadly one of them died And I said, we called him Da, and we said to our grandfather, so you helped deliver the baby? He said, of course I did. I did all those babies. I did the whole 5. One of them, when I was on the Chathams and he was down there with me, and with the grave of this baby is still in Waitangi, and he took me up there, and it's a grave, and it's got a copper our image of a sheep on top of it. And when he was explaining to me, he didn't really know what this baby had died of, but it had a very swollen head. In those days, it may have not have been diagnosed, but it's what we call encephalitis. The brain everything gets swollen. So the baby died, and his name was John Charles. But that was one of his very saddest moments, and he's had a big life, and I can talk about that later, all of them. They've all had a big life. And so he delivered 4 babies that all grew up to be healthy, wonderful adults. One of them in particular taught us how to drink. And she may have taught us how to smoke as well. But anyway, you know, but 4 delivered 4 healthy babies. So the 4 children, which I've just shown you, of my nanny and my grandfather, lived in this house. Went to school here. There was a native school over it, and I'll show you later. And all went to school here. And then my father lived here and brought his wife, my mother, back to this house where they had 4 children.
Wow, there's a pattern.
There's a pattern, yeah. So it was my older brother Graham, my twin sister and I, and my young sister Waiana. Then my son Manaia and his wife Holly and his 2 children came to live here a few years ago, and so the pattern started again, you know, and they come, everybody comes here now. My other son, who lives in Australia, has 3, they're grown-up adults, as old as what you are now. They come back all the time. And so I hope the cycle happens again. Just that one house can shelter so many people over the number of years, with them feeling that they have a place to go to. And this is one of those houses. It's been, it'll be 5 generations, but all Māori.
I just noticed that's my auntie on the cover of Te Karaka.
Are you talking? That's me and Kelly Tiko.
Yeah. Kelly's Kelly is married to my dad's cousin.
Rihari.
Yeah, Uncle Rihari.
Well, Kelly is a Tiko, and I am.
I was wondering when you were talking about the Tikos, I was like,
yeah,
I wonder if that's the same family.
Yeah. Her grandmother and my father were first cousins.
This is the thing about whakapapa friend, you'll
is.
learn that you start talking to someone long enough, you'll find a connection.
There's a relationship.
Well, there we go, we're whānau then.
Hold on.
I'm sitting with Elizabeth at the dining table with more food, and I get such a strong sense of family history and her pride in place. And in particular, I can feel the connection between her and her twin sister Linda. Elizabeth digs in a drawer and pulls out a tape of the 2 of them singing, and you're listening to it with us now.
It's my sister and I. How can my heart forget? Blue as the sky, blue as your eyes, just like the biscuit she wore. Come back to lady, come back. Tōna no te mea more. There you go. Now that's the first time, and there is no word of a lie that I've pulled that out. It must be sitting there for 15 years.
Wow.
When we were up at Wharekauri at college, we had some pretty outstanding Anglican ministers that had been over in the war with the Māori battalion. And they came back and suddenly they were looking after what you call Queen Victoria, Wikitoria, St Stephen's, St Joseph's, Hōkarere, Te Āti, and we had the same down here, Te Waipainamu College. So they became bishops, and one of them was Canon Huata, and he'd led a lot of things over in the war. So he would retire. These people had retired and come back, and Linda and I were twins, as I've said many times before. But we were from Te Waipainamu, which was quite unique, and our girls from the Chatham Islands used to go there too. But they also, what we didn't know, you don't know that you could sing, because you did it all the time, but you don't know that you can sing. Sounds strange, doesn't it? But he picked up on Linda and I, and he said, I'm going to teach you a song. And that's the song he taught us in Italian, because that's what the Māori battalion loved, that song in Italy during the war.
Wow.
And he taught Linda and I that song.
How special.
Yeah.
I can tell there was a real sense of love here. And while I don't have a twin sister, I do have a sister, and I can imagine what it would feel like to lose her, let alone someone you begin your life with. Elizabeth takes us down for a walk to the wharf at the bottom of the road. We look out west across the bay, over the water and past the island, to the far side where many of her whānau are buried.
And she's up there, that's our urupa. I don't know if you can see, there's a little white,
Yes,
little
I can see that.
And behind it is a tree.
Yep, I can see that.
Yeah, that was my 16-year-old son, and right next door to him is all our family, my brothers, my mother and father, our grandfather, our great-grandfather, and everybody else from here, Māori, have got their families up on that hill.
Wow, so is your son buried in the...
He's up there too. That was kind of the beginning of my thoughts about Māori health, because I've been in that for a long time. If anything, that's what I've held dear in certain things in tikanga, those kind of things where if you do the right thing, you can get better. You don't forget, but you can get better if you do the right thing. Yeah.
Sadly, Elizabeth's son passed in a car crash in Australia. Elizabeth seems to want to move on from here, so we do. As she said, this was the beginning of her involvement with Māori health. Sister Linda was a patient advocate and national president for Māori Women's Welfare League. Elizabeth had plans for a career in health too, but quite quickly found herself pivoting.
I trained as a nurse, but as soon as I finished, I was shoulder tapped to go into child welfare. During that time, I had children. There was a time when I was having one of the babies and they were going to close the hospital in Littleton, the maternity hospital in Littleton, and I don't know why I was the person that was asked to go with the doctor up to Wellington to Parliament to ask and to get support to keep the maternity open. Maternity, I think it was called a maternity hospital in Littleton open. It was a long time ago. So that was my sort of first introduction, when I think about it, although I didn't do it for a long time, into politics. Into politics, you have to be in a position of influence to get what is necessary, or what you think personally is necessary for the community. So I did that. just very briefly, went to Australia for a short amount of time, like everybody is at the moment. And I did some nursing at a place called Westmead. It was a big hospital over there. And then as a consequence of my son having this horrendous accident, we brought him home and buried him up in the Urupa. I wanted to come home. And I'm very lucky that I've got a husband that supports me and our family no matter what. He's the man that washes the tea towels. He's the man that cleans the kitchen. He is the man that nobody else would put up with me. But the point
How did you meet?
Pardon?
How did you meet?
Oh, I was a nurse at the Outward Bound School and he was an instructor. And he'd come out from Liverpool and was wandering around the country. And don't put this in, he looked pretty good in shorts.
I don't think he would mind if that was it. Okay, you so do.
Yes, he looked quite good. But the point is, so he came back and I'm not sure what happened. I did a little bit of nursing at Christchurch Hospital and then there was a job going for a medical social worker in the main hospital. And I don't know how it happened, but suddenly the Māori Women's Welfare League put me up to be on the first Māori to be on what we called the Area Health Board in those days. So from there on, and just about all my professional life, I've been able to be involved in governance, you know, with the Area Health Board, with district health boards, with ministerial appointments in Wellington, mainly then in Māori health. And then I decided one day that I'd campaign with Labour, to be a councillor on Environment Canterbury. But I went out and campaigned like everybody else does, knocks on doors, have dogs running after you, all that kind of thing. And I won the election for what we call Christchurch East. But in those days, I was Elizabeth Cunningham. And when I got to the regional council for the first day and brought an ope along with me, suddenly they realised that Elizabeth Cunningham was Māori. And so that was a bit awkward because they had no idea that these people, including the Māori Women's Welfare League, had found out that Elizabeth had won her campaign and wanted to show the the regional council their support for her. But I wasn't there, I was told, as Māori. I was there as the councillor. But one can raise their eyebrows, get on with it, but I'm going to show you I am Māori.
Over the years, Elizabeth was elected to the Canterbury Area Health Board and was the first Māori to be a Canterbury councillor for the environment. She's been president of a local branch of the Māori Women's Welfare League, a representative to Te Runanga o Ngāi Tahu, and chair of Kaua Whakaruruho at Ada Institute School of Nursing and Midwifery. She's also been the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority Governor and a regional member of the Civil Defence and Emergency Management Group. Phew, no wonder they awarded her the King's Service Order in 2024.
Oh, you've got an idea. When this email comes through on your laptop and you're in your own little office and there's a big thing that goes across it, confidential, and I went, oh, what's somebody telling me? And then they explain to you what it's about and you have the Governor-General's signature. You think, no, this can't be. It's quite overwhelming. And you've heard this numerous times from people that have received such an honour award. You've heard this, you can't kind of comprehend for a wee while. And
Did you wonder if it was spam?
well, you do.
Yeah.
I'm serious. You do,
would.
because you have no idea when this is happening that it's so secret. It's very secret. Yeah, I couldn't believe on being appointed, one, to get that honour, but two, a lot of my work's been in Māori health. People think because you're on the board, oh, she'll be right, they just make decisions, But it's a leadership decision making, and you put yourself out there. You really do. Yeah.
Like I said earlier, getting to and from Banks Peninsula is extremely challenging because of the roads. And a lot of people who have lived in Koukourarata have had to make the tough decision to eventually move into town. There are only a few permanent residents in the area now, with a lot of the homes being used as Airbnbs and batches, very much changing the dynamics of the area. Elizabeth's husband Michael is a night carer, so he lives part-time in Christchurch, and even her own parents reluctantly packed up and moved into the city a few years back.
And that's quite sad because I like many others, would want to stay in my home. Somebody come in, mobile services, we've got the technology, all that sort of thing. And to keep encouraging, here it is politically, people to go in these villages and rest homes, I think it's not necessary. If you've got a system that works for the people and not the system for itself. So a number of people do leave here for those reasons, but my relation down the road, I'll use her first name, Marina, she's determined to stay here. She's got a diagnosis that unfortunately it's happening to a number of Māori elderly now, but she said to me, I do not want to leave home. I've got my garden, I've got the sea, I've got everything that I need. Why would I want to go back into town, into one of those places? So our job is to try and get the services that she requires. And already a nurse comes over once a week. Already we've got a family member in place that we're very lucky that's looking after her. But that's just one example. And the other thing, when you're living in isolated places, I'm not just saying here, it's everywhere, drugs start to become more prevalent. They tuck themselves away behind the flats and up in the valleys. They find these little places where they can settle, and you know what drugs can do to a person's personality. So I love this place, and of course I do, but I also understand it does have a problem as well, like everywhere else, including the city. But it seems to affect you more. I shouldn't say more, it affects you when you're living in a community like this. We can't, the only access we have to get out of here is that road that you came through, or a boat. Where people want to live, they have to think seriously in terms of if a person's disabled, or a person needs medical help, or a person needs help. You must think seriously about, is this the right place for you? And if you say it is the right place for you, then hopefully this runanga in itself and other people will try and put things in place for you to be here. All right, okay. Those are our workers.
About 50 steps from her house, literally across the road, is Elizabeth's marae. She wants to show us around the wharenui Tūtehuarewa and the wharekauri pātaka o Wharekauri because it is such a huge part of her life. And it really is stunning, especially some of the carvings that sit outside, done by master carver Fane Robinson. As we walk through the building, she introduces us to various kaimahi whose modern workplace sits next to the whare. And I can really tell how proud Elizabeth is of her marae and her deeply rooted connection to it because of the aroha and joy I hear in her voice.
And this is where we all met. And remember those days, you wouldn't remember, none of you would have been born in those days. But if there was a meeting, and here's the painhamu, if there was a meeting, then there was a little bowl put in the middle of the room where everybody put their coins, and that would, even the electricity bill had to be paid. And the people that lived here, including my father, grandfather, including other people, kept it going by just paying the bills. And I have to say, music has been a big thing here in this community, where we've had people that are excellent at playing the guitar, but other instruments as well. We've got a band down here, we have our whakapapa, and all of us, non-Māori and Māori, join in terms of music, don't they? Whether it's just phenomenal. And at Christmas time, I don't know how it all happened, but we've got about 4 or 5 All Blacks, I don't know if I should say that or not, that have batches or holiday homes here.
Wow.
And at Christmas time they put on a big contest with cricket or golf or whatever, and everybody comes out to play, and I mean everybody. But in the evening, the music is just, it's just fantastic.
It's the language of the soul, isn't it?
I think it is. I think it is. And every community, well, I'm assuming, most communities would at least have that, wouldn't they? That music is the other way of getting people together.
Yeah.
And as I said, we've had tangis in that hall, we've had concerts in that place, we've had all sorts of things, but when they start to sing, it's pretty... it's exceptional.
I mean, you're so close to the marae that I assume if there's kapahaka going on in practice over there, you can hear it from your lounge or your deck.
Yeah, you do. Oh, gosh, yes, especially when you're practising the haka. Oh, my goodness. We're changing it around. That's the two of us again.
I have to say, spending the day with Elizabeth is a complicated experience for me. Seeing her homestead, hearing the stories of generations of togetherness, visiting her marae right across the road, and hearing how heavily involved she is able to be in her runanga, it just isn't the norm for all Māori, and that's incredibly sad. I grew up with my nan, who is British, and though I absolutely adore her, I think it is so special to sit with an older wahine Māori with a certain access into culture that kind of makes you feel like she's your nanny too. There's a deep sense of identity and pride and purpose that comes from being on your whenua, with access to your marae, and in turn, when you don't have that, there's a deep sense of loss, grief, and question marks around who you are and where you belong in this world. Place, for Māori, isn't about ownership or profit, it's about connection, culture, and community. And as someone who didn't grow up in that way, I had to seek out access points to my cultural identity across my entire life. And that feels like a forever journey. It was evident in the time we were with Elizabeth just how much this place is woven into the fabric of who she is and how much pride and fulfilment she feels on her whenua.
There are times when you do need to have time to think about things, and mostly sad things, I know, and what's likely for the future. So one comes down here, and I'm not terribly religious, although I don't tell my school that. But I always see where I'm standing now and looking at the hills and the sea, that's our cathedral, that's my cathedral, and I'm sure it's others. That's my church, and that's what I believe.
Thanks for listening to Far From Town, a podcast series from the team at RNZ and Shepherdess. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're following the series in your favourite podcast app to hear more stories of women living at the end of windy gravel roads and up remote valleys across Aotearoa. A heartfelt thank you to Elizabeth Hera Cunningham, who welcomed us in, shared so openly and gave so generously of her time. It was a privilege to sit at your table and hear your story. I'm your host, Āpage Tarato Rangikura, he uri no Ngāti Irakehu, Ngaitirangi, Ngāpuhi me Ngāti Rarua, presenter, writer and producer for the series. Francine Board captured photos and video along the way. You can see these on the webpage for this series. Felicity Connell is our researcher and production assistant, and Christy McGregor is the series producer. The series was engineered by the RNZ operations team. Justin Gregory is the executive producer for the series, and Brianna Uritich-Gregg is the production coordinator. Thanks to Janina Schwanica for all the great advice and guidance on the series. Tim Watkin is the executive editor, audio. You can find more of RNZ's great podcasts on the RNZ website. rnz.co.nz/podcast. Have a listen.